Welcome to the Huffing Spirit Podcast, where we take you from the sacred to the profane, from the serious to the silly, from the outer to the inner, and from the guru back to you. Join your playful podcast guides, Alex Hindley and Natalie Dick, as they bring you back to a grounded and more authentic approach to spirituality.
We've been conditioned to deny aspects of ourselves, which really gets us into this reductive fallacy, which is us being less than who we are.
Welcome back to the Huffing Spirit Podcast. We have an incredible guest that I am going to let Alex introduce today because he's going to really do him a lot more justice, and because you guys have so much history. And I'm going to stop talking and let you take the stage, Alex.
We're just in the beginning intro part of our history book that we're writing together. So today we've got the fucking intergalactic wizard himself, Chris Powell, innovator, collaborator, continuous learner who has spent his adult life supporting individuals and organizations to elevate their awareness, experience, and contributions in this 3D realm. He's on loan to us from a higher dimension. He's my spiritual big brother. He's one of the most impactful people in my life. And of all the people that I've ever met in all of my walks, he is truly one who makes space to co-create and play. It's amazing to have him.
Is that me?
Is that my turn to talk?
Clearly, you're talking about my higher self.
I love your humanity and your divinity, and I love your assholeness.
Oh, good. I get to be fully integrated here. This is awesome.
You get to bring the dark aspects of Chris to this podcast. Bring it.
Oh, got it. Not too often am I invited to do so, so I'm excited to share.
We're excited to have you, man. I mean,
yeah, we're super excited to jam. I know we've had a video call once before, and I've heard so much about you, Chris, and I'm so excited to dive into your work and what you've been doing on planet Earth. But first, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who Chris Powell is?
Oh, wow. Well, Chris Powell in this iteration and version of me that's here in the physical form is, how the best way to describe it? Well, I went through the long story. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. Large family. Came from a large family. I'm number 7 of 8 kids.
Oh, wow.
So my connection to understanding and observing human behavior, I had a petri dish of 9 other humans to look and observe on the regular for almost 18 years. So I think I could have gotten a PhD in human observation just checking out my own family. And that's just the immediate. Let's not get into the cousins and the aunts and all of that stuff. But no, as Alex said, I've been this, and I describe myself as a kid because I have the curiosity of a kid of just being curious my entire life about things like why are things the way they are, and exploring and learning what I can about them. What I will tell you what's been fascinating is that I know less today than I did yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get comfortable with that because, growing up, it's all about attainment, goal, that, hey, there's a certain point where you got it. Well, what I've learned about learning, you never got it. It's like this ongoing thing. And if you're not comfortable with it, it could create a whole bunch of resistance and contrast and challenge. And so that's been kind of my journey through a whole lot of things, through school, through work, through relationships, through running a business, to being friends, all of that stuff. It's been an interesting journey, to say the least.
And I don't think a lot of people would admit that out loud, that I know less today than I did yesterday.
Bruh. And I got one of those folks that, when they used to measure IQ, IQ thing, I was like, I got punch drunk that I had a high IQ, only to find out, it doesn't necessarily help you navigate life. So
yeah.
I'm like, good to have, but not necessarily all that you need.
There's hope for me.
Well,
I love what you said, because it's true. It's like the more you know, the less you know.
Mm-hmm.
The deeper you dive into like all these mysteries of life, you're just like, damn, I know nothing.
That part. And we've got the beauty of Webb telescope letting us know that what we thought we knew isn't what we knew, and that the universe is expanding at a faster rate than we ever imagined. So, of course, there's always more. You know, as above, as below. You can go as out as far as you want to go, or as deep as you want to go, and still not get it.
Well, I think that's the thing too. Like, as you expand your consciousness, right, you're kind of like increasing these facets of the diamond. And the more facets of the diamond you get, the more contrasting opinions you're holding at once, the less likely you are to be like, I definitively know this.
Because you're holding so many different perspectives. They're all somewhat truth.
True. And Natalie, to that point right there, words that I try to avoid in my languaging of my life and relationship to life. Always, never, and just.
Can you repeat that one more time?
Always, never, and just. Because it's never always. It's never, and it's never just. There, to your point about the dimensions and the, Alex, as you said, the angles that you look, it changes the perspective. So it's never always just or always, you know.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come to that realization?
Trial and error of living life and having to eat my own words. Like, oh, I would never do that.
And then spirit kicks you in the balls and brings it to your door.
Yeah. Like, oh. I mean, you know, from, oh my God, you know, yeah, from exploring psychedelics to any of the other stuff, like, oh, I would never do that. Please. Hashtag done it so many times, I think I could probably be a shaman.
I kind of think you are.
We kind of think you are a shaman, actually. And it's funny because Alex and I are really obsessed on this podcast. We're really focusing this podcast on the masters in disguise.
Oh.
That people walk in the walk in life who, you know, maybe don't look like the shaman or the spiritual templated vision of what we think the spiritual guru looks like. They're walking the walk in this life, but they're tucked away in these, not that you're hidden, but, you know, to have a chat with you. And I'm still getting to know you and what you do, but the way Alex describes you, it's like you have this, you have so much inner richness that people have not found out about yet.
Yeah. And I mean, like having Chris in my phone for me feels like if you knew like a celebrity or something like that. And when him and I met in a psychedelic journey like 8 years ago or something, we clicked instantly. And Chris has been instrumental on my path for the last 8-9 years. And it's just, he's somebody that holds space for you, but also challenges you in the best way. And he's somebody that like I can be totally real with. And the other week I told him about something super petty I did between one of our friends. And he's like, you're fucking petty as hell. And I love it.
Calling it out.
Natalie, when I call you out for petty, it's petty.
Okay. I'm ready. I'm ready for the calling out.
I went out to eat with one of our mutual friends, and they tried to lecture me on eating carbs. It's like, oh, you got a sandwich, you got cornbread, you got this. That's kind of a lot of carbs. And I was like, the fuck are you? Like, do you know how I work out? And then like I told Chris the next day, I went for a run with Jackson in the stroller, and I'm pushing the stroller like 3 miles up and down hills and stuff on the path. And then I took like a sweaty selfie with Jackson with like a video. I was like, hey, can I eat carbs now, coach? He's like, you are so fucking petty.
Well, and in that moment, which was so rich for me, which just reaffirmed why we're friends, right? Because like, what's the benefit of calling somebody a friend if you can't go the full range on them? Like, hey, celebrating them, honoring them, congratulating them, and also calling them petty.
That's right.
You know, and still be friends after you call them petty.
And I thought it was hilarious. I laughed my ass off because he's right.
But I think what happens is we've been conditioned to deny aspects of ourselves, which really gets us into this reductive fallacy, which is us being less than who we are. And I'm an asshole some days, a raging one on some days. And other days, I'm this loving teddy bear kind of dude. So, I'm like, be all of you.
Embrace the sacred assholenesses.
That part.
We go from the sacred to the profane on this podcast, so embracing it. I love it.
Yeah. Well, the good thing in embracing the sacred asshole, I keep it trimmed and everything's great.
in case Spirit wants to get up in there, I got it all cleaned out for it. So Chris and I fuck with Spirit, and Spirit fucks with us.
I love it.
Oh my God. In this very moment, Spirit has got me in the tight grip on some stuff, but it's all good.
We got you.
Yeah, we got this podcast has you, so we're holding all of you here. I love it.
Well, that's so. And one, thank you. I'm grateful for that because, given all of the internal and external factors that are hitting us on any given day, the fact that there's a community or individuals who can hold space for us, in addition to navigating and dealing with their own shit, this is a gift that, I don't have enough words to say thank you for. Because, the energy that's out there, it's interesting. I mean, from the aliens all of a sudden showing up, which we always knew they were here.
Yeah.
To wars and economy and social justice, you name it. Tell me something that's not going through some transformation right now.
The financial breakdown, like the shadows of the world are emerging and breaking down.
But part of that, Natalie, to the point on the shadows of breaking down, these were constructed and sustained for so freaking long. And I have to ask myself why. And the why gets back to more shadow, fear, control, scarcity mindset. I mean, all of these things, So anyway.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit and just give our audience a little bit more context?
Yeah. So if you think about, I'll go back, I was a kid in the 80s when Reagan was president and the whole trickle-down theory. And
the quotation marks theory, yeah.
Right, trickle-down theory. And, I didn't grow up in a wealthy family. My mom was a educator and administrator in the school system. My father worked for the Postal Service. And there were 8 kids. So, and fortunately all of us went to college and all that great stuff. Yeah, great. But at the same time, when that trickled down, I was like, and I used to ask my mom and my dad, I said, where's the trickle? And when's it coming down? And what's it look like?
When's my trickle?
You get a little tickle from this trickle by now.
Right. And so this whole idea of giving this fallacy of false hope, right? I think got further solidified in the 80s with that whole trickle down. And here we are 40 years later, and the gap in terms of social economic well-being is greater than it ever has been. So when are they going to debunk this whole trickle down theory? And I heard it the other day. And I'm like, why are you still trying to hold on to that which has been proven false over and over again? And is it just to give people a false sense of hope? And why would you want to do that other than for control or for fear that something is going to be taken away from you? I think that's where we are on a whole bunch of things in our society, is that those who quote unquote have are fearful that somebody's going to come and take. And those who don't have fear that they won't ever have the opportunity to have. And even if those who have shared, those who don't have are in the mindset it's not enough. And so you got this constant, like, we're missing each other. And I think it creates a bigger and bigger chasm if we were to look in things in terms of polar polarizing activities.
I've had people that tell me they still believe in trickle down, but yet they also acknowledge the fact that the wage gap is wider than it's ever been. And you go, well, those two thoughts don't jive. And, not to get political, I'm amazed with how people hold on to these narratives that don't even serve them. You're like, it's not even trickling down to you. Like, why are you liking this idea?
You're not even benefiting from this theory that doesn't even exist.
That part.
You believe in it.
That part. We're going to be all over the place, because the other thing that hits me on this whole conversation is I have been conditioned. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea is that people are holding on to beliefs, one, that are not their own. They've adopted them from others without really probing back to being a curious learner to explore why they've adopted it. And is it working for them or not working for them in terms of their life? Most folks haven't done that exploratory work in terms of asking the question behind the question. A friend of mine, who's one of my walking buddies, we walk once a week on the lakefront here in Chicago, and we go real deep on stuff. He was mentioning there's this book called The Question Behind the Question, and I forget the guy who wrote it, but it's so like, duh. Like, are we asking ourselves the question behind the questions or the question behind our beliefs? Why are we holding on to things that are not really serving us as individuals, and then us as the collective?
I love that, because it's like that conditioning, it's almost the way I experience and see it. It's like such a thick layer of energy of a false belief system that people are so subscribed into. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's the collective belief that's reaffirming it to the people who are believing it. It's like reaffirming back and forth. Mm-hmm. And like, if you don't start asking the questions and you don't start unraveling or breaking down from that conditioning, mm-hmm. you're wrapped up in something completely false.
Which is interesting, because like the way that you're saying that, Natalie, I'm seeing it as like a mirroring thing. And for me, like the theme that I think connects you two is you run your practice based off of like mirroring people. And Chris describes his organization. He's like, I'm just a mirror. We're just a mirror. How do you both begin to even hold that mirror up to an individual or society?
Oh, Chris, I want you to deep dive into being the mirror in this organization. I can't wait for you to crack into it, because I do it on an individual. So I want you to crack into
that. Alex, to answer your question, how do I do that work? I have to do that work on myself first. Mm-hmm. Right? So if I'm going to be responsible or accountable for holding the mirror for a client or an organization that we're working with, if I and my team aren't doing that work, it's going to be really hard for us not to impose our perceptions and biases onto their mirror. And that's the real work right there. And I tell myself and my team is that when we're doing mirror work, we're like journalists, not opinion talk show hosts, journalists. What are the facts based on this continuum or construct of measurement, right? So based on this frame, because you got to qualify it, because even the frame that we're using has a bias to it, but we try to reduce the bias of that so that when we're speaking back to the client or the leaders within that organization of being that mirror, first, here's the disclaimer, but then here within this context, this container, here's the journalistic truth as we know it, without our opinion, because anything, a positive or an opportunity to improve, the solution around that is inside the organization. It's not with me. And so part of what we do is take a journalistic approach on being the mirror, but then take a Montessori approach to helping and supporting and interpreting leaders through discovering their own solutions to that which they see in the mirror.
I love that.
So that's the work.
And to give our audience just a little bit more context on your work, can you describe the company that we're speaking of? Alex and I know, but I want to get our audience like, what are they talking about?
What are they talking about? Well, I'm fortunate to be the team captain, as I call myself, for a company called Tal Metrics, and that's talent and metrics. And we're an employee feedback, insights, and research organization where we go into organizations to help them listen to the voice of the employees around different topics. It could be on employee engagement, employee experience, culture, climate, change or transformation. And so we're that listening partner that then captures all of that data, organizes it back to be able to tell a story back to the client. Hey, where are your opportunities here? Where are your issues? Where are your risks? And then in that Montessorian approach of guiding them and coaching them through how to address and solve for, that's the other part that we do. So that's that mirror work, right?
And I like that because you're not taking here's my program template and putting the organization into what you offer. You're working with their uniqueness.
Yeah, because, there's a lot of similarities in organizations and individuals, but back to the Holy Trinity, as I always call it, there's always that uniqueness. And so we like to say that we measure what matters for you, because if we're measuring it for you, Natalie, it could be different than what Alex's focus and needs on. And so that's how we kind of make sure that we're configuring and designing what we're measuring based on who you are, what you are, and who you want to be. All right. So that's that whole journeying process.
And Chris's team, the members that I've met so far, Natalie, it's kind of like Black Panther-esque. And they're all like queens in their own right, but they're like the Dorja Milaje protecting the Black Panther. Like they're all these like badass women doing super cool stuff that you're like, wait, what? And I can't even imagine like the creative workspace that they're all in energetically.
Yeah, it's an amazing team of, and Alex, you met a lot of the ladies on the team. There are also some guys on the team. We keep them away from you.
Rightfully so. I get it.
Keep the women away from Alex.
No, the women he knows.
Oh, keep the guys away.
Guys away. Yeah, because he's too much man. He's too much man. He's just too much man for you.
My restraining order knows no bounds. I mean, it does. No genders, I should say.
But yeah, it's an amazing team. And one of the things I appreciate about the team is everybody's on their own unique journey of dealing with both how to amplify their light and how to bring light to their shadows. So it's an interesting petri dish of a collective, because one of the things, I spent 20 plus years in corporate America running HR for a couple of organizations that, in HR and running HR for a couple of organizations people may know. And one of the things that was so important to me was creating an environment that fostered self-directedness, right? So you as an individual self-direct, but also understand how that supports the collective, and creating that environment where less legislation of things would be required, less of, forcing what I call conformity into the organization. But Alex, you'll know this from our fellow mentor, Kurt. How do we get unity without conformity?
Unity over conformity. Can you walk us through, and I love this because I'm not sure there's many organizations working, like I feel like you guys are working with the energy and more of the spiritual side of reorganizing and helping these companies express what the true uniqueness of what they are, right? And connecting it. So, and maybe that's my perception of the company, but can you dive into a little bit of shadow work within an organization? I'm fascinated by this because I'm like, I love shadow work. I do this with my clients. I do this with myself. But how do you apply this on a corporate level?
Yeah. Well, and I don't have the empirical evidence, but just kind of from my experience of working in the space, so much of work inside of organizations is based off of what I call positive psychology, which is great. And there's needed in that movement of, hey, let's find the good in everything. Great. I'm with that 100%. And I'm also with understanding the underbelly of an organization. What are those things that we don't want to talk about? What are those things that we all know, feel, or sense are in the environment or in the climate that makes this just a little harder than it needs to be, or a little bit more fear? And it's the things that are in that underbelly, Natalie, aka shadow, that create, when you start to hear the current buzzwords, psychological safety, trust, efficacy, all of those things those things are influenced by the things that are beneath the water level, right? That you can't see. And so part of our job in measurement and assessment around organizational culture or climate is, yes, let's measure those like factors, but also let's assess where there are shadow factors, or what I call those sub-optimized experiences, processes, policies, leaders, whatever it is, that if we could put light on it would help expand the impact of the organization achieving its purpose, right? And so if you're only focused on your right arm, well, let's just call this your positive stuff, then what are you going to do with the left arm? It's going to get atrophied and it's going to get weak after. And so you need both arms, in particular if you want to drive the car safely.
And I love that, because I think, would you say that, there's some resistance with that within the organization? I can only imagine how many people are like, well, I don't want to go there.
No, there's a ton of resistance.
Yeah.
And back to, because so many individuals haven't started to go deep on their own research. Therefore, it makes it harder to look at the collective and do that work. And then because somebody's got to take accountability for driving the change or transformation. And and I know, when you take accountability from trying to move something from this to that, and to the degree it's successful or not, it could be off of your head, or you're being championed as the greatest hero or heroine an organization has had. So there's a lot of risk for people to take on this charge inside of organizations. I'm reminded of a documentary I saw some years ago. No, I take it back. It wasn't a documentary. It was Fareed Zakaria on CNN Global Perspective, Sunday morning, one of my favorite people to watch. And he was talking about, back in the 20s and 30s, in the early part of our industrialization, we had a lot of family-run businesses, the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, the railroad folks, the Fords. I worked for Ford Motor Company. All of those, they were in the businesses, shaping the businesses and contributing back to the community. So they had an invested interest. The leaders today don't have that same accountability and or ownership in some of the major corporations, not all, but, and so where is that real accountability? It used to be based on meritocracy. It used to be, as they say. I can wax on, wax off about that. But there's a fear. If you're a CEO of a major Fortune 100 company, your primary job you're driving to is those quarterly numbers that get posted up to drive the stock. And if you're not, you're only going to take so much risk to really move the organization from to, because if you go too far, the risk factor becomes too wide for you to really be able to absorb. But if you're doing your work and you're grounded, right, in your consciousness and in your spirit and in your body, you're more equipped to do that. But there's fear to go get yourself ready to do that kind of work, because you don't know what the reward is.
I love the way that you broke that down.
Yeah, thank you.
And the question I have for you, Chris, I'm going to steal it. This was supposed to be Natalie's question, is what happened in your life from spirit that changed the way in which you view reality, where you're like, oh, there's something else here, whether it made you like a student instantly, kind of like that moment in the Matrix where he's like,
there's gotta be. I'm just waiting for this great story.
Oh my God. Well, it actually was my last tour of duty inside of a large organization. I was the corporate head of HR, had, responsibility for, I think it was about 2,500 people globally around the world, about a $2.5 billion business at the time in the media space. And I got to the C-suite before I turned 40. So I was my ego was supercharged. Like you couldn't tell me shit. And because my whole career, I was gunning to get to the top job because I thought my perception was I get to the top chair in an organization running HR, I would have the ability to bring my full self to work.
Like you would actually be able to be the real Chris.
Right.
The real Chris can show up finally.
And to the contrary, it was not 100% opposite of that, but about 60% opposite of what I thought. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking at my bank account grow, I'm living life, traveling the world, all of that stuff, collecting stuff. And literally one day I was on a plane coming back from India, 13-hour flight or something. And, if you're on one of those long flights, you get bored. Boredom can't seep in. And I literally just went into this meditative space and I asked myself, am I living my best life? Is this all there is? If so, there's got to be more because this is empty as shit.
Wow.
Whoa. And shortly after that, maybe about 8 or 9 months later, I transitioned out. And then I took almost a year off to get regrounded in myself because I didn't realize how much of myself I had reduced myself to in order to be there. Yeah, I was like a bouillon cube of nothingness.
I hope you don't use bouillon cubes anymore, Chris. You know damn well I trained you better than that.
Maybe I do occasionally.
I love that story because I can almost visualize it as the constructs of this organization and you're just squeezing your way through all these like boxes and trying to get into this rectangle and over here and there's no expansion for you. Like no way for you.
That right there. And so Natalie, you just reminded me of something. When I first started seeing Kurt, our mentor, back in 2014.
It's 3 name dropping episodes, then we're done after that.
All right. He should start paying us royalties or something. I don't know.
I
don't want him to blow him up, and then we can't even get in to see him anymore.
Well, one of the things I remember in a session with Kurt I had with him, and I said, and this is what I had just transitioned out of corporate America, and I was starting this business, and I'm starting in this business, and I said, Kurt, I said, there's so many boxes that I had to unpack and get out of and blow up. I said, I got a T-shirt that I want to come up with. It's called FTB, and FTB is fuck the box.
Fuck the box is right. I love that. I will promote that T-shirt if you make it. I'm going to wear it all the time. Fuck the box.
I like it, brother.
Well, and the thing, I was so committed to this. I called my business attorney. I said, "Can I patent that or trademark it or something?" But that's the thing, even as from a developmental stages, we're growing up. People started asking us at 5 years old, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" What 5-year-old really knows?
I don't know
18-year-old.
I didn't know anything. I have a similar story, Chris. When I was in corporate, I worked for L'Oreal on the west coast of Canada in business development, and it's a very large corporation. I was very like, oh my God, this is really, my ego was just like lit. My ego was like, this is so glamorous. Like it's got like Fashion Week, and the trajectory for me was this, and I kept seeing all the people who were in the position of where I was going to go next, and they're working these ridiculous hours, and I just kept having this feeling in my gut. I'm like, if I go there, I'm going to be trapped. I'm going to be trapped in corporate, and I'm not going to play in my gifts. And I really had to get clear with myself before I left. And I was like, I want to help people. Like I was obsessed with like holistic health and just starting to crack into all of the stuff that I do now. But it was really hard. And I will say getting out of that position. And then I had to ask myself, who am I? Because I was so wrapped up in the identity of the brand that I was, a part of. And it's wild how much unpacking and unraveling of these constructs that you're tied into.
Mm-hmm. It's like shellacking something, like just layer after layer after layer after layer.
Oh, it's icky. It's icky.
Yeah, it's work and commitment. It's not for the faint of heart. Because
I admire about you, Chris, is like every time I talk to you, like I am aware you're doing the work. You're constantly questioning yourself. You're constantly taking in new information, and you're also saying like, okay, does that influence me at all? Or like you're objective witnessing in so many dimensions of your life, but also like you're doing the work and you're not just letting the outside influence it, and you're truly guided to bring people back to themselves.
Well, Alex, I'm glad you said it that way, because what the underlining thing for me there is around being an intentional creator, right? So if you think about one of our primary purposes for choosing to come to this realm and to this dimension was to create. For me, it's all about how do I intentionally and consciously create versus being whipsawed by the matrix or the box or whatever, constraint that is being presented or forced upon us, right? That is, God forbid I use this word because it's so bastardized now. That's the level of consciousness, aka what some people used to say woke, but we can't say woke anymore because it's a bad word. But yes, staying aware is work.
Hard work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about how leadership in today, because I know this is one of the topics that you're really amped about, leadership and what does that look like today? And how does that matter within an organization as you're kind of navigating all this? I love that you're doing shadow work within the organization. I'm like blown away by that.
In terms of leadership today, I think the paradigms of what I call the industrial age of defining leadership and what that looks like, very structured, very rigid, very boxy, extremely
masculine.
And I saw that when I worked at Ford, which was organized. Oh, I'm a level 8 and you're a level 12. And at a level 12, you get 2 company cars and, all of these these things that come with it, right? I think leaders, the paradigm in which and how we support, develop, and coach leaders today has to be more holistic, not just around process, but around what I call the vibe or the energy of how things get done and how we decide and determine how to organize ourselves as a collective to get things done. And that it's not always kind of this hierarchical approach. It might be more a horizontal approach, kind of like I open we do these whiteboard sessions with the team and I'm like, hey, there are no stripes in the room. We're all contributing. And just because I sit in the role of CEO, my ideas are no better than your ideas or worse than your ideas. So we will bring them all together. But it's not like taking on full ownership for everything, because I think that's what leaders were taught years ago, that you own everything. And that's not sustainable. And nor is it fair for a leader to hold that and for team members to have that expectation of a leader.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah, because the leader is dealing with the same shit that the team members are dealing with. But the content and context of that experience of the leader is different than that of the team member. And I recently went through this program. I took a couple of my team members through. It's called the 4 Rooms of Change. And one of the visualization is that there's this high rise, and at any given day, I could be on the 20th floor or in the basement or on the first floor. And so as a leader, people have to understand you're running up and down these floors all day, every day. And the perspective of the content and context of who you are and on any of those floors is shifting. And so I just think we need a broader perspective of what leadership is. I think it needs to be more holistic and be more humanized than it is today. I think the expectations that are put on leaders far exceeds what I actually think most of them are able to do. Mm.
Implementing like a different frame of how leadership happens within a company, what are some of the results that you've seen from redefining what, like having less expectations on a leader, like maybe not looking at, again, like that hierarchy, but looking at each company, do they all have their own individuated way of organizing themselves?
Well, Natalie, to that point, I think there's always that individuation of, kind of, hey, let me put my own special stank on this or approach to it. So I think that's always going to exist because of our uniqueness. Mm-hmm. And also the content and context of our experience, right? I think that's always going to have some influence on it. But I think I've seen some of the most interesting, fascinating, transformational work is when organizations shift the paradigm around coaching, developing, and supporting leaders from doing leadership to being leaders. Mm-hmm. Right? And getting back to that inside out versus outside in, because the outside in, you're bringing in all of these values, these boxes that may or may not be germane to you. But if you go inside out, then it's just easier for the individual to take personal accountability for how they show up versus saying, oh, I only did that because they told me to do it. Or right. the rules of XYZ say I have to follow this. And there's a little bit of that necessary. So let me not poo-poo on all of that. But too many people default to the reason why I can't show up to be the leader that I need to be is because they're telling me this is what I have to do. And that conflict between the two.
Would you say that, like, I love that you said the being, because now we're looking at, in the most broad stroked way, the masculine and the feminine, but bringing in mm-hmm. a little bit more of that feminine energy into leadership and organizations. Has that dramatically shifted and changed?
I think that's part of the struggle right now is because the masculine energy for leadership has been so ingrained. Yeah. That the introducing more feminine or divine feminine energy into that construct is where we're seeing some of the consternation or the dissonance in the model.
Right.
The thing that's really interesting, Alex, I think I had this conversation with you, is oftentimes the male energy gets characterized as toxic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is unfair.
Totally unfair. We need good, healthy masculinity. Absolutely.
And right. You've done a lot of fucked up shit.
Yeah.
And I got
Yes, it. And so as we're introducing more feminine energy into this construct of called leadership, right, and community, the one thing I try to instill in the conversation is this isn't a course correction. This is creating a new way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I hear sometimes, oh, we need to break down toxic masculinity and da-da-da-da. I said, you can't, everything that exists has the right to exist. And I know that's hard to accept for a lot of things. Trust me, I know. And we can't exclude anything. And if we are talking about if it's gender identity and everything from being super male to being super female and everything in between with non-binary, everything is on a continuum. And so how much of everything do we need to create a container that allows all of us to show up and be? So there's going to be some aspects you're going to need a little toxic masculinity. You're going to need some divine masculine, some divine feminine, and even some toxic femininity, because I've seen it.
The darkness.
Woo!
There. It's loud.
Hey, I grew up with 4 older sisters. Trust me, I've seen it.
Yeah, is like a woman clapping in a woman's face. Is that toxic femininity? You know what we're talking about, Natalie?
No.
Chris, I'll let you elucidate.
No, I don't know. What are you talking about?
Like certain cultures, people like women get in somebody's face and they clap their point at somebody. Like,
okay. Yeah.
Chappelle's got a great bit about it, but
Okay. Now I'm putting 3 and 3 together. I got it.
Yeah. So back to like, we can't exclude anything. So the question is, we've got to get better at how, and this is the problem that I have sometimes in this conversation around inclusiveness, because even those folks who are out there talking about inclusion are trying to exclude stuff.
100%.
And they're making money on it.
God, Jesus. I wish I didn't have that kind of, I mean, there are moments I'm like, what? How in the world are you going to say, oh, we want these people in, but we don't want these people in?
Yeah, it can feel like as it is, it's creating more separateness. And I think, like you said before, the real intention of inclusion is to recognize that we have way more connectedness and similarities than differences, and focusing on those differences is really, it can just drive so many things to be apart.
Well, and Natalie, to that point, if we talk about us as humans, each one of us is trying to fully individuate. And so in our individuation, we're constantly adding further refinement to who we are. Mm-hmm. I am this, that. And each one of those breaks down into some segment of identity. And so after a while, you're just like, are you human or you're a tree? I mean, I'm like, at some point,
tree.
And I get it on one hand of us is trying to express, right? And Alex, my guy, Matthias.
She loves Matthias' stuff now as well.
Oh, I love Matthias.
Oh, do you?
I love him. I could listen to him for days. I can just eat up all of his content. He's wonderful.
Man, I watch, he's on Gaia a lot, and I used to just I get caught binge watching.
Yeah, same. I love him.
binge watching him. And he has this whole framework called, I'm going to mess it up, called this 5th dimensional framework, where there are 4 points in the 4th dimension. In order to see the 4th dimension, you kind of got to be at the 5th dimension. And he talks about expression, experimentation. God, Jesus, there's 4 points.
Embodiment?
Transcendence. The 3rd point I am forgetting, but there's this 4-point framework when he's talking about the expression. That's that uniqueness that we're all trying to express.
Right.
But then we've got to take that uniqueness and experiment with it, and that's called life.
Yeah.
Then out of life, we get these lessons, right? And that's the 3rd piece. Integration. I think it's called integration, that we start to integrate to help shape our perspective and our consciousness. And then we're able to move into transcendence and expansion. And so it is in that expression piece where I'm here for everybody to express themselves uniquely as they want to. However, as we start to move into experiment, that's when those boxes start to show up.
Yeah.
And how well and equipped are we to identify a box, break down a box, or not even create a box for ourselves. But anyway, I can wax on, wax off.
Yeah, it's a charged, very charged topic, but I feel you on that. It's as we individuate, I think the more anchored we become into self, we just become so much better able to mirror the similarities between ourselves. That is where I think humanity is going. I'm hopeful for that, because it is this seeing each other as separate it's not working.
No.
It's not working at all. And we have to move away. It's layered in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I love what you said earlier, Chris, about if the individual hasn't done the research and the research, they're not aware of what they're doing. They're not taking accountability in it. And then they can't collectively see the bigger picture of how they feed into that scale as well, too. And then what we're all doing, what I see with you two, and I know within myself, is we're doing the work. It's messy as shit, especially being a parent. And some of the part of being a parent isn't like, it's great, it's wonderful. It's like, yeah, really fucked that one up, but he's going to see me apologize and say that I'm sorry and know that stuff gets messy.
Yeah. Yeah. I sometimes describe my life as a beautiful mess, but it is what I wake up for every day. Because that's how I learn. I mean, is figuring out the mess of because there's meaning in the mess of why is it there? And I think a lot of people are not even curious enough to even ask, why is this mess in my life?
Yeah, and they want to make it go away. There's magic right there in that messiness.
Well, and that's why, when you hear all of these silver bullet solutions, drink this mud water and you'll lose 50
I have
pounds.
mud water. I do have mud water. I do like it, but I went back to coffee. Sorry, mud water.
We all fall into this stuff, guys. I got a nice bath. I'm ready to break in soon.
It's the hacking. I'm going to hack my way through life. I'm going to I'm going to hack. I'm going to bypass. I'm going to fix. I'm going to put it over there so I don't have to look at it.
What if we start terming bioacceptance?
Oh, I love it. Bioacceptance.
As opposed to biohacking, right?
I know.
That's a whole, I shouldn't say this on a podcast. This is a whole multi-million-dollar idea we could be branding.
Oh my gosh. Bioacceptance.
I'm submitting a trademark now.
Trademark that shit now.
Ryan Green? I don't do that, Alex. That's a different department. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Natalie, you said something there about this hacking thing, right? If you watch TV, it's about hacks. It's not about getting to the core.
Never. It's never. Everything that we see in this reality, there's a solution that's outside of you. There's a framework or a template that's outside of you that you can fit into that's going to fix you because there's something deeply wrong with you that you're experiencing any discomfort at all. So this over here is going to fix you. And that is like literally the whole point of this podcast is to drive people back to the home to themselves, that you're not broken. The answers are not always outside of you. Yes, there's guidance. Yes, there's help, but you're magic inside of you. You're perfect. You're perfectly imperfect. And this is where we need to go in the journey inwards versus like, I'm going to grab onto that identity and I'm going to grab onto that because that's going to make me whole. Sorry, I went a little ranty there, but.
No, I love it. I love witnessing both of you and your brilliance. It's powerful and beautiful.
Hey, no, this is delightful. I don't get a chance to go as broad, as deep, and kind of all over the board with folks on these topics. So I really appreciate the opportunity to connect. There's so much more, and I so appreciate the two of you having this podcast and holding these conversations, because it reminds me as I'm moving through and making decisions about what to explore, experiment with, making sure it resonates with me so that it's got some truth for me in it versus, again, hacking my way through something because somebody else outside of me told me that this was going to be my silver bullet. Yeah. Helping debunk the charlatan stuff that's out there in the field these days. So
yeah.
Well, that would bring us to our next question for you, Chris. You want to ask it, Natalie?
I think you want to.
All right, I do.
Get in there.
What is your, the whole podcast about cutting the bullshit. What's your biggest quip with the douchebaggery in the spiritual game? Like, where do you see this? It's an industry now, right? But where do you see it kind of going astray?
I literally was having this conversation the other day.
Synchronicity.
I said, I know. So it is not short on me that cannabis is legalized in several states, which therefore means it can be, quote unquote, controlled more with these limited number of people who grow it, similar to our food system. So there's going to be shit that's going to get put in additive and stuff removed from it that's not going to have the same organic, natural intent. And so it's going to be, it's not, I feel it's going to lose some of its efficacy in terms of helping people, move through and discover and break boxes and all of these other things. I see that and feel that too as psychedelics are coming online, right? In certain states, you can go see your psychiatrist or a licensed medical person and get, what is it, ketamine treatments or something, I think it's called.
And you get ketamine, MDMA, what have you.
So it's like induced now.
And again, I just know how, I've seen it too many times because the Cheerios I eat today are not the Cheerios I had when I was a kid. And I just see it becoming this thing and it's,
Control.
I'm sorry.
No. It's interesting because, up here in Canada where it's just on the brink of it's about to be legalized. Our weed is, but psilocybin is just about to be. Yeah, it's going to be watered down.
Yeah, and so I laugh. I'm like, I got to find my farm to table people. Where can I get my organic mushrooms?
Right?
Maybe start a spiritual co-op farm.
That part.
Grow our own humans.
Did you see that Klingon? Did you see that Klingon? I can do that with my forehead.
If you're listening to this on Spotify, you can't see Chris's face.
If you're listening to it, we haven't figured out how to do the video component of it yet. So.
That works.
So, Chris, I have a question for you. Again, the foundation of this podcast is bringing people back to themselves. And how would you say that in your work you bring people back to themselves?
Oftentimes, the way that we do that is at the on-site. This is you, not me. We didn't take this. We didn't take this survey. We didn't do this listening session. This is you in the collective you, unless we're doing some one-on-one leader work. And part of that is grounding them in the is. This is what is. Now, if the is of this moment and this data that we're putting in front of you doesn't represent who you want to be, you, as the leaders, have the opportunity to choose differently of how you want to get to where you want to go. And I think the moment that we put that back in front of them, that, hey, you own this, you can take action on it or not. But this is you, not us. And your check is going to clear one way or the other. One way or the other. And I mean, literally, and being resolute in that kind of perspective around the work is like, look, this is your work. You paid for it. We're bringing this back to you for you to do something with, is how we do it. And there's nothing, I shouldn't say much more to it than that, but that's literally how simple we approach it. Because to try to get into the psyche and all of it, it's just too much for a lot of these leaders to take on. Because, one of my things is I think most leaders have the least amount of psychological safety. They have less psychological safety than their employees.
I would agree. I never actually thought about that, but now thinking about it, absolutely. And if our audience is wondering, who is this Chris guy and where do we find him? Where can we find you? What's the name of your company, your website, all that good stuff?
Coming out.
Talmetrix, EALMETRIX.com is how you can find us on the web. We are virtually based everywhere now. I happen to reside between Chicago and Cincinnati. Today I'm in Cincinnati. I mean Chicago. Can't keep it up. Can't remember where I am. But yeah, that's the easiest way to find it. I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, and don't look for me on Facebook because I don't check Facebook often. But LinkedIn and Instagram, I'm on there more often. So if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me there as well.
Awesome.
Perfect.
And final question for you, Chris.
Yeah.
You need to assign the homework that we're going to do that hopefully other people will do. So 5 minutes a day for, 1 to 2 weeks that we're doing this homework, what would you think would make a impactful practice for us or any person listening? That if you did it, if you had to recommend it to anybody getting into the spiritual stuff, like you did 5 minutes a day of this, your life would be hacking.
Hacking.
What hacks can you give? We're not into hacks, but just it could be like self-inquiry, like anything like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you my tried and true favorite is a morning ritual around grounding yourself through meditation.
Perfect.
Check in with yourself before you start your day. Articulate to yourself and to the universe what kind of day you want to have. Because if you don't do it, that means you're unconsciously creating your day. And then you wonder why your day went freaking haywire on the back end because you weren't intentional about how you wanted it to be.
And you get pulled into everybody else's ideas, thoughts, dramas, constructs, whatever it is, programs.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. That's a really good practice.
Awesome. I can't wait to do it. I should be. What's that mean?
Lapis. The lapis stone.
Oh, it's a lapis stone. Do you always carry that?
I either have it with me or I have it on my bracelet, so it's usually somewhere nearby.
The other, sorry, Chris is a gem guy. Go into your gem.
Yeah, so the other thing about the lapis, it represents blue, which is the color for the fifth chakra of voice, throat, communication.
I'm gonna get me some lapis. I have a lot of different crystals and gems, but I don't have lapis.
Quick story. The other week we're in Chicago and we go to see Uncle Chris. So Jackson goes to Chris's place and Chris has got all these stones out and he goes, Jackson, what piece do you want? And Jackson grabs the labradorite and in Jackson's hand, like a light was shining through it, it goes like neon blue. And Biddy, Chris and I all look at it, what? And it's just glowing like it was
activated just for him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was really cool.
That was super cool.
Wow. That's amazing.
And this podcast was super cool. We love having you on, Chris.
Yeah, we're going to, there's so much that we dove into, and I'm so grateful. We're both so grateful for having you on and your wisdom. I'm sure your wisdom is going to permeate our audience, and they're going to love all the tidbits, everything that we've talked about. It's been such a great conversation. No,
this was great, and thank you for inviting me and being flexible on the recording and everything. And Alex, interestingly enough, my 3:30 call is with our mutual friend who shamed you on your carbs.
Great.
Right back at you, Alex.
Tell them they got named. Nominated. I can't wait.
Oh my god!
That's amazing.
Well, I hope you two are connected more now too. Like I'm excited for you to hang out.
No, Natalie, you are. What's the word I want to say? It's beyond brilliant. It's
Thank you.
Yeah, I had the word, but anyway, brilliant plus. I know. It was just it was easy to dance with you, and this crazy one in here. You're in the middle of my screen, Alex. This one here, that guy.
I love you, Chris. Thank you.
Love you too.
Oh, so much love. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today, Chris. And
you got it.
We will see you next time on the Huffing Spirit podcast.
You got it. All righty. Be well.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Huffing Spirit podcast. Remember, you are your own teacher. Take what resonates and leave the rest. For more info, follow us on Instagram at Huffing Spirit Podcast and subscribe on Spotify or iTunes. Bye for now.